exactly 3. So this is the San Diego Regional Litter Abatement Subcommittee. And I want to welcome you to the second meeting of the year. We have new board members to the subcommittee. So I'm just going to introduce them. Yeah, let me see if I can see them. Hold on a second. I can see some of you. Okay, good. Thank you for everyone for being here. Okay, so we have Councilmember Moreno from the City of San Diego. We have Supervisor Vargas from the County of San Diego. We have Councilmember Musgrove from the City of San Marcos, Councilmember Frank from the City of Poway, Councilmember Green from the City of Vista, and Mayor Huebner from the City of Solana Beach. And then we also have our remaining members who were on the subcommittee before, who are Councilmember Sotelo Solis and Mayor Dedina. And if I've missed anybody, please announce yourself right now so that we can all know who's on this call. Okay, I think that's everybody. Okay, so it's been 2 months since we last met and a lot has happened. So we had our first Tarp Your Load event. And I'll just say a few words here before I say those specific things. So this committee, the point of this committee is to deal with the trash on our roads. So if you're like me, you drive on our freeways and you see that there's just an unacceptable amount of litter on our freeways. And this is not something where there's like a divided community, like some people like trash, some people don't like trash, right? We all recognize that trash is an environmental disaster. It goes into our rivers and our oceans. And it's also, it's aesthetically, it makes it so that our county is just not a nice place to drive around. I mean, when you see all this trash everywhere, it looks as if it's not being maintained. It looks like no one cares about it. It degrades our quality of life. And for many of us, if you're like me, when you're driving, sometimes it's stunningly beautiful. You know, we have trees and hillsides and the sky and the ocean, and then you pull off on an off ramp, or you're going a little more slowly, or you just look and you see how much trash there is and you're just kind of disgusted by it. So this committee was formed as a way to have hearings for us to talk to Caltrans specifically, since it's Caltrans right of way, and then to understand if there's any places where we as local elected officials can create change. So is it pressure? Is it accountability? Is it new regulation? Is it trying to engage agencies that maybe have been less engaged, like the CHP or the regulatory agencies who oversee trash and waterways and pollution and that kind of thing. So we've had a number of different agencies come to speak to us. And Caltrans, luckily we have a district director who is engaged in this topic. I'm sure he's spending more time on trash than he ever wanted to, but we appreciate that he is taking this very seriously, is working at levels above him and with the leaders in our county to try and deal with this. But you know, when we elevate the conversation so it's public and we have elected leaders who show up to talk about it, then we might create the path to action. Because if you talk to other electeds about this, they'll say, I've been working on that, or I've been trying to get something done behind the scenes for years, and it just hasn't happened. So this idea of having public hearings with elected officials, talking to Caltrans in public, asking to come to account and recognize the problem and own the problem, you know, that's what this whole thing is about. So I'm really happy that all of you have joined it, and I'm happy to have the returning members who are also remaining committed to this effort. This is not the type of meeting where we're just trying to meet to meet. We're trying to meet to see that progress so that we can no longer have to have a litter abatement subcommittee. So one of the things that we did that was talked about initially at our very first meeting was that a lot of trash blows out of trucks, either trash trucks or other people's cars as they're driving to the landfill. So an idea, which has been tested in other parts of the state, was this Tarp Your Load program. And so the first one of these got off the ground here in our county, and I went to it in the last weekend. And it seemed relatively successful in that everybody we handed a tarp to was happy to have it. And there were the important community partners. So in addition to Caltrans, there was I Love a Clean San Diego, Surfrider, and the CHP, who were all handing out tarps, and then also the staff members of the Otay Mesa landfill. And so, you know, seeing that and trying to create some more visibility around how it is we can drive without letting trash blow out is a really important part of this. And today we're going to be hearing from our waste haulers on this same topic. So I encourage you as members of this committee to ask those tough questions of our waste haulers, of Caltrans, of whoever else comes here, because basically this is not the kind of committee where we have staff that's producing recommended actions for us. This is the kind of committee where it's all about what we want it to be. And there aren't really other committees like this, to my knowledge, that are operating like this. So make sure that you engage with this topic and ask those hard questions. So you will all have a chance to talk at the end, but we're not going to spend time at the beginning having the board members talk, because we want to hear the presentations, and then we'll get to the board member comments and questions at the end. So I will, at this point, we'll do the meeting minutes, and then we'll get to the presentations. So we have in front of us approval of meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was in January. And I would look for a motion there.
This is Moreno, happy to make a motion.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Moreno.
Dedina, happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Dedina, and we'll go ahead and vote.
Thank you, Chair. For the City of Encinitas, Chair Blakespear.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina.
Dedina, yes.
Thank you. The City of Lemon Grove is absent. For the City of National City, Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. For the City
Thank
of
you.
Poway, Councilmember Frank.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Moreno.
Moreno, yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Councilmember Musgrove.
We can't hear you, but we can see you. Here, just put your thumb up like this, and we'll take it as a yes.
I wasn't present. I don't have the meeting minutes, so I'll abstain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Hebner.
Yes.
Thank you. And for the City of Vista, Councilmember Green.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And that does pass with one absence and one abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any public comments?
No, Chair, no public comments.
Okay, great. So now we have our panel today. So we have EDCO's General Manager, Jim Ambrosio. We have Republic Service Municipal Administrator, Giovanna Castro. And we have Waste Management's Public Sector Manager, Daniel Butler. And I'm gonna hand it off to Gustavo from Caltrans to introduce this. But I would just like to say to those panelists that I have had a number of comments of feedback that talk about the waste haulers and trash blowing out of the back of waste haulers, because you are the ones who are going to the dumps, of course, much more frequently than any other car. So I would like you to just really directly address if there's anything we can do more. You know, we're trying to stay away in this committee from having an explanation of everything that's already happening, because what we're trying to do is create change, right? So if we want some different outcome on our roads, we need to find places where we can do a little better. So to the extent you can say, yes, we recognize this as a problem and this is what we're doing to work on it, I think we would really appreciate that at this committee. So I'll hand it over to Gustavo at Caltrans from here.
Thank you, Mayor Blakespear, and welcome to the new members, new subcommittee members, as well as the continuing ones. Today, like the chair mentioned, we have representatives from EDCO, Republic, and Waste Management. These are the three biggest, basically, waste haulers in our region. So obviously, collectively, they have a lot of knowledge about litter, about trash, and also can help us sort through how we can have a better condition on our highways. So I'd also like to point out that in addition to being waste haulers and being here today, some of these companies also are participating in our Adopt a Highway program. Specifically, EDCO and Waste Management have adopted portions of 94, 8, and 52. So not only they're here today to help us sort through the litter problem, but also they're putting their money in where their mouth is. They're helping us keeping some of our roads clean as well. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome them and also maybe ask them to maybe give us a quick summary of what their operations are like for the three different companies, since they kind of handle different parts of the county, as well as they have some own landfills, some don't. And after maybe they tell us a little bit more about their operation, like the mayor said, is there any information that they have, any suggestions that they have that they may help us to try to keep our freeways clean? So maybe I'll pass it first to Jim Ambroso at EDCO, and we'll start with him.
Thank you, Gustavo, and good afternoon, Mayor Blakespear and other members of the subcommittee. We have had an opportunity collectively as representatives of the waste industry to meet with Gustavo and his team and talk a little bit about this. And we've been monitoring the work of this subcommittee now for several months. And I think that much of what has already been learned about where the sources of litter on our roadways is coming from has been discussed in detail. But I think it's important that as an industry, we want you to be assured that besides us tarping our trucks when they're going up and down the road, which we all do, there are many other things that we do in our yards and in our operations to also keep litter not only from leaving our trucks, but from our customers who come in and out of our transfer stations and landfills. I'll speak to EDCO's facilities because we do operate 7 transfer stations within San Diego County, kind of spread out all over from north to south, east to west. But we obviously run a lot of trucks around. We do tarp our trucks. That's a requirement for all of our vehicles, and most of them are automated tarpers, as you've probably learned already in some of the previous presentations. But inside our facilities, when a customer comes in and unloads a load, we make sure that they always, before they leave, they completely empty their loads and remove any litter that might be on the back of the tailgate or on the bumpers, perhaps, something like that, things that could fly off once they get back on the road. That's just a normal routine thing we try to do, keep everything within the disposal facility. All of us, I know, do policing. I call it policing, but litter pickup around our facilities, make sure that we have folks out there every day picking up litter that might be blowing when they're coming in, some of the customers, or maybe perhaps from our facilities, which we certainly don't want. But we also provide street sweeping around our facilities to make sure that we're doing our very best to clean the roadways and street sides. The other thing, and I hope I'm not taking away stealing everybody's thunder, Daniel and Giovanna, but we do have regular communications with our customers, and this is an area that I believe, I'll speak for EDCO, we can do better of having better communication with our customers through our newsletters that we send out, to just put those reminders out there that we're all responsible for litter. We all have a responsibility when we're transporting maybe a load or self-haul load to our, to when I call it self-haul load, that's you're cleaning up your garage or your backyard and loading up a pickup truck and hauling it to a facility to dump, that we make sure we tarp them so that we don't lose some of it along the way. But that's an important consideration. And the last one I'll mention, and I'll let maybe if there's anything else to add here with my colleagues, is just that a reminder in our literature that our customers need to shut their lids of their containers. A day like today, it's pretty windy out there. And if they don't shut the lids, there's stuff that can blow out, and that too will contribute to the issues that we sometimes see. So I better stop. I probably stole everybody's thunder, but I'll let the others speak as well.
Thank you, Jim. Why don't we go to Giovanna Castro from Republic, and thank you, Giovanna, for hosting us at the Otay landfill about a week ago. Giovanna, are you with us?
Yes. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. So my name is Giovanna. I'm the Municipal Administrator for Republic Services. Thank you for having me here today. So really quick, Republic Services is the franchise hauler for the city of Chula Vista. We also service the city of San Diego, as well as the unincorporated parts of the county. We own and operate the Otay landfill and Sycamore landfill, as well as the Palomar transfer station. And we have 4 other hauling sites throughout San Diego County. So as far as litter abatement, Republic is really focused on education and preventing litter in our facilities, as well as at our landfills. So at our hauling sites, we have on-site employees that keep the areas clear and free of litter every day. There's also daily street sweepers that clean the main areas as well. On route and public areas, our trucks are equipped with brooms and dustpans, and our drivers are trained to pick up litter as they're servicing customers throughout the day. And then for the city of Chula Vista, we provide a service at all city bus stops, and service of these bins are completed on the area service day as well. As far as the landfill, our goal is to contain all windblown litter by keeping our workspace as small as possible. So for containment, there's 3 layers of fences. So one is on the working face, another is a distance away, and then the third one is our boundary fence. And we also have staff at our landfill that are picking up blown litter as well. And so as far as additional outreach and education for litter, I agree with Jim. I think, revamping our education with a focus on how to prevent litter and the importance of reducing our waste, and including that on our bill inserts, on bill messaging, newsletters, etc. I think Republic Services also has, an advantage as we own and operate the landfills here in San Diego County. So we have that opportunity to really reach the customers as they come, and whether that's in a form of a flyer or some type of signage, to really get the message out there that it's the law to tarp your load, and how they can help reduce litter in our communities and protect our environment.
Thank you, Giovanna. We'll go to waste management next, Daniel Butler. And maybe after Daniel gives us the summary of his operations, we can circle back, and maybe if I can ask the 3 of you to maybe weigh in on what do you see as far as signs at the facilities for people that show up with untarped loads. Is there any consistency? Are we enforcing fines at the locations for those of you that own signs? And then also maybe if you can cover if you have any statistics regarding the amount of trash that is out there. Do we have more trash under COVID or not? And so let's go to Daniel first, but maybe you can start thinking about those 2 questions. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Daniel Butler with Waste Management. I'm not sure how much more to add after Jim and Giovanna's excellent rundown there. We have 3 hauling sites in San Diego County, one out of El Cajon that services mainly City of San Diego and unincorporated County of San Diego. We also service City of Santee out of that hauling district. We do have 2 other districts in the northern part of the county, one out of Carlsbad and one in Oceanside. Those mainly service our 2 franchises in the North County, City of Carlsbad and City of Oceanside. We also service the City of Del Mar, and then also unincorporated in the northern area. We don't have any landfills or large transfer facilities. We do have a small transfer operation out of the El Cajon hauling site, and even smaller transfer facility in Oceanside, which is mainly for recyclables. When it comes to our own operations on tarping our trucks and regular inspections, we do much more than what is required by law. I think EDCO and Republic could also agree that we try and stay to a higher standard than a lot of the hauling, the smaller hauling companies that are around the county and around the state. And we do have higher visibility when it comes to our brand. So we do take the covers very seriously. We do take litter abatement extremely seriously as well. To Giovanna's point, I'll probably say this a lot, Jim and Giovanna's points. Our drivers have containers in the cabs. They do have brooms for cleaning when they do see litter. We train our drivers regularly, have safety inspections of the trucks. Anytime we are servicing our locations, if we do see residual litter that comes about our operating, then we get out of the cab and go ahead and clean up the area. Again, to Jim's point, we do a lot of outreach to encourage the lids to be closed. As he mentioned, today is a very windy day all over. Actually, I'm up in Riverside County and it's very windy up here too. So when you do see overloaded carts, not only on the curbside, but also with commercial customers, that's when you do get a lot of debris to floating around. And back to Giovanna's point about waste reduction, right? We do encourage waste reduction on all sites, and including eliminating use of plastic bags and even containerizing bags sometimes as well, because those bags can be problematic as you tend to see them stuck in the trees from time to time around the neighborhoods. So we do understand it's a major concern. not just in San Diego County, honestly, everywhere. And we do as much as we can to control what our trucks operate with. And when it comes to the smaller haulers, that's not really a touch point that we have too much in San Diego County. We do operate a large landfill in Riverside County where we do engage in regular interaction and education with third-party haulers that come on site. So like I said, not much to add when it comes to what EDCO and Republic have already run down. We have very similar operations with our competitors down in San Diego County. I just want to say I think this is great that this committee has been put together, and I agree with Mayor Blakespear that there should be action out of this discussion. So we're happy to be here.
Thank you, Daniel. So to all three of you, my two questions, the first question maybe is, do you notice more trash under COVID, just because the dynamics of how life changed over the last year? And then the second question was more specific to the companies that do have either transfer facilities or managed landfills. Do you have fines for people that show up untarped, and are we enforcing those fines? And do you have any thoughts along those lines?
So for the COVID question specifically, I wouldn't say there's necessarily more volume. It's just more volume from different sectors. A lot of people are staying home. A lot of businesses were closed for a long time, as we all know. And so what we saw was a dramatic increase in residential volume and almost a similar decrease to the commercial volume. Another major concern or I guess increase in volume came from what we call bulk item pickups. We saw 300-400% more year over year with our residents taking advantage of that service we do provide of the large items on the curbside. The problem there is some folks don't always know you need to call in to set up an appointment on those. Most times we don't do clean sweeps. And so that could also eventually lead to a little bit more litter and debris around our areas. But yeah, we did see an increase in residential volume. I can't really speak obviously to the fines and in terms of the landfill and transfer station. So I'll let EDCO or Republic jump in on those ones as well.
Yeah, I can jump in. So Republic Services does have a $10 fine for customers that come in that do not have their load tarp. We currently are not enforcing that. We're still accepting customers, but I did speak with the landfill manager, and we definitely are open and willing to start enforcing that again. I think the challenge is we do not want to not accept these customers into our landfill. We still want to allow them to dump their materials, because if we turn them away, more litter is going to go back into the community. So I think it's important to think of a solution, and if that is enforcing that fee to encourage people to tarp the load, Republic Services definitely wants to revamp that up at our facilities.
Yeah. Similar experiences as what Waste Management and Republic have had at our facilities, which are transfer stations with the EDCO network. We do have a tarping requirement with a penalty of $10 a load if they don't have a tarp, and the same as Republic. We don't enforce that. The primary reason is as well of penalizing customers coming in, but also when we had discussions with CHP, they encourage us not to do it as well, but just to have it up there posted and to let them know that a day may come when we will impose a fine or a fee for not having tarps. We don't sell the tarps, but this reminded me of a time back years ago. I used to oversee landfills, and we had safety requirements for self-haulers coming in where they bring their loads in, and we required that they had steel-toed shoes, but also helmets, hard hats. And a lot of folks didn't have them. And so we would provide them. We sold them to them for, it wasn't much. It was like $2 or $3 a helmet, I believe. And it was interesting at the beginning. There was a lot of complaints and grumbling and whatnot, but we insisted that if they didn't have their hard hats, that they had to buy one. And over time, what do you know? They all had their hard hats. And so I think that the TARP policy is something that we probably should pursue with fines, so that folks will change their behavior and adjust. Yes, they will have them eventually. It's just managing human behavior a little bit. With respect to COVID, we did see an increase in the, as Daniel said, in the residential side of the business, and that self-haul business went up, depending on which month you looked at, it was 15% to 30%. And yes, it shifted the tonnage around from commercial to residential, but by having the residents bring it, we did see more self-hauls. We did see more loads that were not tarped, pickup trucks, for example, or trailer loads, and that did probably contribute to more litter on the roadway. So I think we're coming around the corner on COVID, hopefully, but this whole thing is still going to require some additional reinforcement as well as education that's been mentioned already.
Thank you, Jim. So obviously the couple of issues related to the fines, one is that if you start enforcing them, people may just start dumping things on the side of the road. And that's maybe one of the concerns that comes that is related to a comment that you made regarding the CHP. But also the other one is that if we don't have a consistent fine in all of the facilities, then people start deciding where to go and take stuff. So it would make sense to have either all of the facilities charge the same fine, or like now, not necessarily none of them, because encouraging people to go to maybe another landfill that is not controlled by your companies, then that would mean basically different trips, and now the trash basically being even more exposed by being longer on the road. So definitely, maybe that's something for consideration of this subcommittee. If we want to take an approach to the fines, it probably should be a regional approach and should be definitely tied into an education campaign. Because the last thing we want to do is penalize people. I think first we want to educate people, give them a chance to succeed. The event that we had a week ago was also through the partnership of some of our partners like Aloha Clean San Diego and Surfrider, was to give people the free tarps so that they have a chance to do the right thing. But obviously there are so many times you can try to do the right thing, and eventually if people just don't have pride in their communities, we may be pushed into doing something regionally. But I stress that because I think it makes sense to have more of a regional approach rather than an individual facility approach to this issue. So with that, I think all three of you, I think you've given us some good ideas. I'll turn it back to Chair Blakespeare in case she'd like to follow up with some questions, and also to the other board members as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I see Supervisor Vargas has her hand up, so go ahead and ask your question.
Actually, thank you so much. The question was around the issue of education, because I think there's a lot of, people don't know, right? They don't know about the bags. They don't know about all these different things that are available. And even though you may send emails and flyers, I think that's where we can be helpful as elected officials to share some of that info as well. And then also was trying to figure out for the fees, instead of fining people, can you add it maybe in payments or something? Because $10 may not seem like a lot for one person, but for other people, $10 is 2 gallons of milk. And so just being very mindful, right, and about how where the fines, how we do this, and the impact that it has on families. And if somebody doesn't pay their bills and then they end up going, it's a vicious cycle, right? Credit reporting later for $10, it can become something bigger than it really should be. And so if there's ways of us finding solutions to help our communities, not be impacted that much by this, so that we can actually get them to, do the right thing with their trash, I would be able to, any way I can help, I'm happy to do that. But I'm a little concerned because to be honest with you, I lived in apartment houses for a long time, up until 3 years ago, and I had no idea. I put everything in a certain place, and then when I got my house, I didn't realize that if I just put the stuff outside like I did in Tijuana, they would just take it. It doesn't work that way here. You have to actually call and say, I have extra bags that I have to, and then they give you a different color bag, and then they come back and they pick it up. So this is just from personal experience, and I'm super educated, right? I work in government, and I know all this stuff, and I didn't know all these things. And so I can only imagine what it's like for some of my constituents as well.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of folks don't know a lot of the services they have available to them. And, I know for a fact that we put out endless amounts of outreach to make sure folks do know what services they have, because we want to eliminate that type of not only litter or debris, but also the illegal dumping that comes from the large items too. And I know that's kind of a subtopic here or a tangent, but I think the education piece is critical here, and not so much the fine piece when it comes to telling someone when they show up without a tarp. And they are subject to being pulled over by CHP though too, right? So if they have an unsafe load where they're driving around, they're still subject to all the same transportation laws that we are. I think that, I don't want to speak for Jim or Giovanna, but I know that it would be great to do some sort of collaboration with this group where we have, I don't want to say universal, but more like a uniform message when it comes to this, and we can all kind of jump on board with it. But that's just kind of spitballing, really.
Yeah, this is Giovanna. So Republic Services, so in the city of Chula Vista, we send out a monthly newsletter where we educate all our residents and businesses about the services available to them. So we are really trying to revamp our education and include pieces about the OTI landfill and safety practices and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But I totally agree with Daniel. I think if we have some type of universal messaging and we create a communication campaign or marketing campaign in conjunction with this group, that would be great, and we would be able to reach more people and really get the message out.
The only comment I would add.
We have a number.
No, go ahead, Mary Blair, that's fine.
No, go ahead. I was just going to call on the rest of the people with their hands up, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I would just make one comment regarding the fines. I know that, we're talking $5, $10 potentially. And I think that if we start even at $5, there's some deterrent there, some additional cost to absorb, recognizing completely what you mentioned there about the fact that this is can be a big hit to some people. But there needs to be some negative consequence to not having this. And I think if they purchase a tarp on their own or through us, hopefully they'll keep it, or if we can offer it for free, perhaps all the better to some. But I think there needs to be some deterrent here for sure. That's meaningful for the next time they come.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Musgrove.
Yeah, I just want to ask a quick question. Assuming that we're talking just about bulk deliveries to the centers and not about curbside service, is that correct?
Yeah, I think we're speaking to we've been speaking primarily to our disposal facilities, and primarily that's what the conversation has been about. Yes.
Okay. And what I know EDCO's our nearest service center, and they keep their facility clean. I've brought bulk items in. I drive by there all the time, and it's very well policed, so no concerns there. But as I drive around the city, and this morning I was down off of Friars Road, so I drive around the county all the time on my other job. And when I see litter on the roadways, the residential streets or different areas, it seems to be small items that just continue to collect. And I know that in my neighborhood, some of my neighbors try to push the limit and the boundaries on the garbage in their cans. So I was wondering, I'm going to a particular point, and Jim is shaking his head. He knows what I'm talking about. Do the trucks have rear cameras? And if they do they pull the video periodically to review? And since we're talking about maybe less than considerate consumers who are not policing their own garbage, is there a thought about addressing that with the individual customers? We came and we took your trash. However, how long would the route be if the driver had to stop at every single house and pick up the garbage that blew out of the can that was overfilled? And then I'll stop. Thank you.
Yeah, I think all of us can relate to what you just described, and that is that there's a lot of containers, both residentially and commercially, that are overfilled. We do try to address those, in particular the habitual ones that always seem to overfill, because it is challenging in a windy day like today that some of that litter will blow out. rain gets on it. And that's not good because it just adds weight to the whole load, and some of that can leak out of the trucks if you get too much water added during the route. But I think you also have, besides the commercial businesses, we try to take pictures of those accounts with cameras on the trucks, yes. And we then circle back and try to address those with those customers and give them maybe more service if they need it, maybe an additional container, a larger container. Residents, we sometimes offer more carts if it looks like they habitually put out more than they have. So I think it's an ongoing challenge for us. Seasonality plays into this. In the holidays, people are really overloading them, putting extra bags or containers next to their carts even, and hoping that we'll empty them. So it's a big challenge, but it's a good point. It's one that requires a lot of educating, constantly educating, and follow-up from our companies.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Moreno.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the presentation. I do want to take the opportunity to thank all the franchise haulers who are proactive in trying to prevent litter. In particular, I want to thank EDICO for providing dumpsters free of charge for my community cleanups. In 2020, we had 30 large dumpsters for cleanups and for our dumpster drop-offs. This year, we're averaging one cleanup a week. And my district just wants to thank EDICO very much for this. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to let you know how much the residents of District 8 appreciate your proactive efforts. So thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Huebner.
Yes, thank you all. I'm definitely in favor of the education campaign and in various languages, but Daniel touched on something. Is this a violation of law if they don't have a tarp? And if it's not, how could we make that so, which would maybe start with quite a few warnings? And then I'd like the other idea that Jim mentioned from EDCO, and that would be to provide free tarps. And maybe that could be subsidized by the haulers and or I don't know who else. So those are my questions and comments. And I guess the question would be specifically, is this a violation of law? And then the other is the idea of free tarps something that waste haulers would be up for?
Daniel, you
One
want
of
to
you
take
want to answer that?
the law? Yeah, I think that I'll take a shot at this. I think from the standpoint of the law, there is a requirement that loads in the state of California, roll-off loads and loads that we haul like that have to be tarped. You'll notice the transfer station or transfer truck loads are all tarped. So we all put automated tarpers on for the most part across the board. I think a lot of the smaller haulers haven't done that necessarily. They do strap tarps across, but that's one area that probably needs some attention is some of the other haulers, the smaller ones. But it is a requirement and we have to do it. And CHP is out there enforcing that from time to time if they see folks not using them. With respect to free tarps, I think that all of us are willing to consider this and be part of a program if it's done across the board where everybody does it, sure. Not that we wouldn't do it ourselves, but you know, we try to put the onus on the customer coming in. And yes, the self-hauler who does a pickup load every once in a great while, they're not going to think about that or whatever. They'll tie it down and hope it doesn't fly out on the way. But in those cases, it's probably good that we are providing them somehow, whether we give it to them for free or whether there's an effort jointly by all of us, including perhaps the city's helping us with it.
Well, I think also though, you know, we also need to make sure that they're aware that they're supposed to be tarping. They may not even know. And then they may not even know where to get them. So I would prefer more of an education push. Do you know you're supposed to be tarping? Okay, here's the transportation law, here's stormwater issues, here's all these other concerns that come about, and where can you get them? I think that would be maybe a little more helpful to get them to the smaller haulers that Jim is alluding to, or even the self-haulers, right? Folks with the trucks that can tip at those different sites. Like I said, that there's just might be more awareness than providing something that it really isn't a difficult part of the operation to do. They just may not know that they're supposed to.
Good point.
If
Okay,
I
thank
may
you.
jump in and just mention that regarding the law, the subcommittee had a presentation by the CHP last fall, and they went over these sections of the California Vehicle Code that require people to tarp their loads. We can make that presentation available to the new subcommittee members if they would like to see it.
Sure, thank you.
Mayor Dedina.
Thanks, everyone. Good discussion. And yeah, I think, Gustavo, with all due respect, I think people now throw their garbage on the side of the road. It's very clear, South 5, it's people just empty their, garbage on the road and just, they're fine with that. So, and I think the way it is on speeders, it's clear that, there's been an exponential increase in traffic deaths from, people are driving like, it's like the road warrior on our freeways. We see it all the time. I'm a little, maybe because I'm old school now, but I used to be afraid of getting a ticket. It's clear there's a small percentage of drivers who are driving recklessly and increased speeding that are probably causing a large proportion of the accidents and problems. It's not everybody, and I would argue probably it's a small percentage of waste haulers or self-haulers that are causing the problem. So I agree with Jim. I think the education campaign is great, and I think we need to look at ways to incentivize good behavior and then penalize the repeated problem, whether it's commercial hauler that refuses to do so or whatever. But it's clear that CHPs, to me, I look at what's going on our highways and just the reckless driving that I see all the time, the speeding, the racing, people, apparently young people I always see like young people just don't fear getting tickets anymore. They're not wherever. And frankly, I rarely ever see the CHP anymore at all on the highway. I can't remember the last time I saw someone get pulled over for speeding on the highway. So yeah, I think definitely we want to make sure we're education, compliance, and then focus on the people that are really problematic. But in terms of fear of trash, it's just, it's South 5, south end of the county, it's a garbage dump. I've never seen anything like it. And let's all be clear, it was like this before COVID. It's gotten worse during COVID, and it's going to be like this after COVID if we don't change. And it's not like this anywhere in the country at all. It's not in California. This is a California problem. It's clear that our state agencies are not concerned about this, and everyone's making excuses, but we're all going to have to do better because it's unacceptable. And again, we're unique in the entire country. There's no other metropolitan region in the entire country, LA, Orange County, Riverside, San Diego, that are like this, where this is acceptable.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to ask if there's the 3 waste haulers are here with some good ideas about trying to have consistent messaging, enforcement, education, providing free tarps, selling tarps. Is there someone who can quarterback this? Like who's going to say, okay, we're going to do a little bit more. We're going to try to address this. And I'd also just like to add that we definitely see the waste haulers themselves with the bits blowing out the back. So, the enforcement around your own employees and their sense of like who owns this problem, even the waste hauler that was driving back from the Otay Mesa landfill after making the dump, which I was standing on the side of the road, and you see the truck going away and there are a couple pieces of plastic and paper that blow out, that kind of thing. I would like it if out of today's meeting, which involves you, the waste haulers, we've heard from CHP and various other partners, but if there could be somebody who would raise their hand to say, okay, the next step on this is, and we'll do this or that. Is there, and maybe that's Caltrans, maybe that's you guys. I don't know. I was impressed by what Jim said about things he's seen in other places that have worked. And I might suggest that you get back to us in 6 months with what you've done and what's happened.
Mayor Blakespeare, I think
Yes,
that,
Mayor.
oops, sorry, Gustavo, I'll
Go
just
ahead,
add
Jim.
this and
No,
you
go
can take it. I think that when Gustavo called us all and asked us to collectively meet and talk about this, it was a really good conversation on behalf of all companies. I think we all share the same challenges and concerns, and I think I would really like to see the 4 of us entities continue that discussion and highlight an action list, then perhaps decide how best to approach it. Would be my recommendation, and I welcome my other colleagues to suggest otherwise.
Do your colleagues
Thank
want
you,
to say
Jim.
anything?
Yes, Mayor. I was going to raise my hand and basically say we'll take the lead. We will continue meeting with the 3 waste haulers here, but we will also like to invite the city of San Diego so that we can have the perspective from the Miramar landfill. And I think we will develop some action items. So it won't be just meeting, but having some action items that circle around the issue of the fines and the education campaign, as well as the outreach.
Okay. Okay. Good. And I encourage you to get started on the action items. Don't wait to present them to the committee for discussion. You know, it's because in many ways, I mean, we're having this discussion because what we see is unacceptable, and we want that change. And you don't have to get approval from us. You know, we're saying, putting forward the opportunity for this dialogue, that convening power to happen. So I do encourage you. There are already signs that say there's a fine, but then it's not being enforced, and so it's as if there is no sign. So having the sign, and then maybe whatever you're doing to do a little more of it, to get it going, to get ramped up on it. I think that's a critical part here. So maybe, what does the committee think? Like that we come back in like 4 months and see. This committee only meets every other month, so like 2 meetings from now to see like where are we? Have we made any progress yet? Does that seem good? Okay, and then we have I think we have 2 public comments, so let's go ahead and go to those.
Thank you, Chair. The first public comment will be Alex Yakutis, followed by Len Herring. Alex, we've provided access to your microphone. You can go ahead and unmute yourself to get started.
Hey, thanks so much. I'll limit myself here. There's so many things that come to mind, but EDCO supports us where I live. I'm the chairman of the Coronado Planning Commission, and I want to thank them for their service. And this is no reflection on Gustavo, and thank you for what you're doing. I know you're really working hard at this, but have we ever thought about the reality? Because Caltrans, just broadly, doesn't seem to be able to handle this part of their role. And I bet you guys, EDCO and Republic and Waste Management, probably wouldn't want to do it either. But have we ever thought about privatizing this responsibility for road cleanup to the private sector and sending it out to bid, competing it, and then holding those people accountable with renewals of contracts versus having to have Caltrans manage it? They're engineers. I don't think they're really great on the cleanup side. So that's just a comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Next will be Len Herring, followed by Colleen Foster, who will be our last commenter.
Okay, and thanks so much for the opportunity. And I want to kind of harp on what Mayor Dedina said, and more importantly, the comments that were made by Lemon Grove's mayor. I want to make absolutely certain that everybody understands from I Live a Clean San Diego's perspective, the waste haulers are not, and the landfills themselves are not in particular the center of the problem. The problem really exists in a much larger scale across the entire county. And is manifesting itself in areas that are not routes that are to our landfills. And they are associated with so much more than just waste collection and hauling. And I said during our TARP Your Load program, if you go down Main Street to Chula Vista and head towards the Otay landfill, there are 23 recycling centers on Main Street alone, each of which accept hauling from any number of different locations. That's where a very large portion of what it is that we're seeing throughout the community really is coming from. It's the back of pickup trucks. It's moving equipment from one place to another. It's the commercial entity of moving its load from one location to another, not necessarily to the landfill. There's a much larger problem that San Diego can't seem to get its arm around. And it is manifesting itself into a much larger problem across all of our highways and byways, in our neighborhoods, in the whole 9 yards. It's everywhere. So, tarping your load and getting these particular portions are very important, but we really do need to do a completely different effort in both education and enforcement, which is why, when we stood this committee up, and Mayor Blakespear, thank you very much for supporting it. But we got, California Highway Patrol involved, and they were right there at the Tarp Your Load event to make absolutely certain that they were there as a law enforcement agency to tell you that you're violating the law when you're not properly tarping yourself. So we really do need to, I think, take a larger and broader look at how to do this. How do we educate individuals to make absolutely certain that we are addressing even more than what's there? How can we get into the commercial aspect? How do we get to the local resident who doesn't understand that the soda bottle that gets tossed in the back of their pickup truck is the trash that we're dealing with? And they're not headed to the waste dump. They're headed to the local grocery store. The bottle in the back of their truck isn't going to make it there. So I appreciate all the other things, and the waste haulers being a very large portion of it. And yes, we've seen them. But I think that our education effort needs to go much further than what we're discussing right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. And next is Colleen Foster.
Good afternoon. My name is Colleen Foster. I'm the City of Oceanside's Environmental Officer. Mayor Blake Spear and the full committee, thank you for allowing me to participate. I've been working with the City of Oceanside for the past 15 years. I get the complaints from the public in regards to litter and how it relates to collection, and a little bit of a reiteration from what the gentleman from I Love It Clean San Diego said is the large franchise haulers have actually implemented a decent level of best management practices, as required by law. And then also our city's existing franchise agreements, where I see a lot of the issues and the complaints that we receive is kind of that small mom and pop pickup truck, transporting materials, or, scavengers collecting recyclables. And so if you're going to do an educational campaign, that Tarp Your Load campaign, really applying that across the board to, all those third party type haulers and how they move material, and trying to facilitate, a digital and a print and a media campaign around that to encourage people to take responsibility. I think other ways for the haulers to get involved is maybe rather than a fine, or rather than just handing a tarp out, if you have somebody bringing a load and it's not tarped, then you either require them to tarp it or sell them a tarp in order for them to be able to drop their materials. Now, given that said, I'm sure some people will just turn around and dump it somewhere else. So illegal dumping is a very big issue that is going to really require collaboration across all the cities as well as the franchise haulers. And then lastly, when we're really looking at litter and in relationship to your question earlier, Mayor Blake Spear, COVID's impact on the generation of waste has increased by 40% in regards to single-use packaging. So when you see a little piece that you see those plastics or a little piece of something coming out of a collection vehicle, for the most part, that is single-use packaging. So until we implement policies to limit these materials and provide opportunity for recycling, you're going to continue to see, increased litter on our roadways. Those are light-weighted materials. Those are the types of materials that do not stay in collection vehicles very easily. Those are also the types of materials that come out of overloaded carts and bins. And kind of to speak to that also, I think cities have a tendency to place public litter containers everywhere they see litter. Well, every time we place a public litter container, a lot of times those containers become a liability because they get overfilled. They do not have adequate servicing. One time a week doesn't cover the need to service it 7 times a week. And so we've done studies in Oceanside where we've had containers that, had a high amount of litter around it. And we've removed the actual litter container and have found decrease in litter, essentially because people don't tend to stuff a can that doesn't exist. And so it's kind of an opposite way of thinking. But I think really being honest with ourselves in the placement of litter receptacles, making sure they're clearly supervised and adequately serviced, and considering other ways to manage litter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Blake Spear. That concludes the public comments.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to follow up on a couple of the public comments. So the first one from Alex was about privatizing, and I'd like to hear Caltrans' response to that public speaker.
Sure, Mayor. First, I'd like to say that Caltrans is not just a bunch of engineers. Actually, a third of our workforce in our district here in San Diego and Imperial County is maintenance staff. So non-engineers, people that deal with maintaining our highways every day. So we're not just an organization of engineers, and we do use the private sector to help us in this endeavor. And I'll be covering some of that in my presentation in the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I'll just say from the other two public speakers, I do appreciate the public speakers who are calling and participating in this along with our board members. You know, the idea of this much larger effort that touches all sectors of how we communicate and all commercial sectors and you know, in many ways, I think we're trying, what can we do, right? Politics is the art of the possible. And so the idea that like you eat an elephant one bite at a time, like I feel as if there's a recognition that like, yeah, we should have a totally different waste, circular, recycling, green waste stream. And some of that stuff is changing right now because of state law changes, which is great. But other things are just like, we're seeing this situation on our freeways, which has gotten just substantially worse and like trickled up where our baseline of tolerance has been going up and up and up. And so, you know, the waste hauler piece is what we're talking about today. And, you know, I know that in our city, when we were having our bathrooms and our public parks were too dirty, we started having to clean them twice a day instead of once a day. It was like the recognition that with increased use comes increased maintenance and the budget that's associated with that. So in many ways, you know, Caltrans has just not been able to keep up with that. And, you know, how we can reduce the amount, but then also clean it up more is ultimately what we're trying to get at here. So having this question of who's going to own this problem and how are we going to attack it? Are we going to have legislation? Are we going to have an audit? Are we going to have just better improvement from the way each individual piece is doing their part? And I think this committee is trying to say, okay, if we recognize there are a lot of parts of this elephant, let's eat a few bites of it so we can get going on this and see some improvement. So you know, just putting that out there as a recognition that certainly we could have more profound change and that would be great, but I just don't see anybody leading that right now. So let's go to Caltrans now with the next item, which you are going to talk about, Gustavo.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we have a presentation. If I could have the clerk maybe load it up. And this is a presentation to kind of summarize the efforts that we have undertaken since the formation of this leader subcommittee, but also some of the things, some of the history behind the leader issues. So if we can go to the next slide. So Caltrans, the public communicates with Caltrans regarding multiple maintenance requests through what we call customer service requests. This is basically an app, much like some of the cities have, where the people tell us there's a problem in a specific location regarding either litter or pothole, graffiti, weeds, you name it. So just for perspective on the volume of customer service requests that we received, last year we received nearly 7,000 of them, and about 2,500 of them were trash related, so 40%. It was double the amount of customer service requests that we received on the previous calendar year. The second item that we received the most requests regarding is graffiti with 1,100. So clearly trash is what we hear from the public the most. Next slide, please. So litter is definitely a hot topic, and it's definitely a statewide issue. I don't know about other parts of the country, but it's definitely, we're in tune with what's happening in the rest of the state, and most of the urban cities are dealing with this issue. And our district, as you may know, is also covers the rural parts of the San Diego County and Imperial County. and it's not as much of an issue in those areas. When you ride some of our rural roads, you will notice that they are actually clean, like some people mentioned in other parts of the country. The problem seems to be focused mostly on our urban areas, which it's easy to understand. I mean, the trash comes from people. So the more people you have, the more trash that they generate. It is also an environmental issue. And we have a permit with the State Water Board. At the last meeting, we had a presentation with the State Water Board, and we presented on what the Caltrans permit is, as well as the city's permits. And obviously the intent is to try to make sure that the litter doesn't end up in our water bodies, our parks, etc. So definitely we're all working together towards the same goal. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what I mentioned earlier was that our maintenance people work on many things regarding maintenance, and not just litter. Our maintenance people also maintain our bridges. They maintain graffiti, lighting, guardrail, pavement. We provide incident response. Some people don't realize that we're emergency responders, and we respond to incidents like the awful incident we had about a week or two ago in Imperial Valley, where 16 people died in a traffic collision out on State Route 115. And on the same day, we actually also responded to a collision of a military convoy on southbound I-5, where a service member lost his life. So we're first responders as well. And obviously when those collisions happen and we're called by the fire department and the CHP to respond to those with them, we basically drop everything that we're doing, because those things obviously take priority over anything else that we do. We also maintain striping and pavement markers. We also maintain landscaping, signs, traffic signals, and of course we sweep our facilities as well. So hence, we're not just an organization of engineers. We have a lot of professionals that do all these tasks every day of the year, and actually 7 days a week. So if we can go on to the next slide. So this slide just shows you some pictures of what I just mentioned before. And maybe I'll just add that in the rural areas, we actually respond to snow. So with these winter storms that we've been getting, we also perform snow removal, as well as help the CHP with when we have chain control is required on some of the rural roads due to ice and snow, and we held the CHP in the checkpoints to make sure that that happens and people are safe. So let's go on to the next slide. So when I mentioned that litter is a statewide issue, how big of a statewide issue? Caltrans spends $100 million a year just picking up litter in the state. In this district, so in San Diego County, we spend about $12.5 million, which is about 19% of our total maintenance expenditures. So in last fiscal year, we actually picked up about 183,000 bags of trash, or the equivalent of 26,000 cubic yards. So if you look at how much we spend on pavement maintenance, you'll notice that we're actually spending twice as much on litter as we do on pavement maintenance, which it's a sad state of affairs. Let's go on to the next one. So how do we clean the transportation system? So first, we have some specialty crews that basically respond to those customer service requests, and they are dedicated specifically to pick up litter. 2 days a month, we actually have implemented some litter days that were basically all of our maintenance crews, regardless of what their activities, normal activities are, they're out there picking up trash. We also perform sweeping at every major maintenance station, but also we have a dedicated night crew that takes the advantage of the fact that there's less traffic at night to sweep some of our shoulders. And the importance of that is that our shoulders is where the water collects during storms, much like the one we had today in the last few days. So if we don't keep those shoulders clean, then that trash ends up going into our drainage systems. The smaller trash, the larger trash gets picked up by the grates. We also perform what's called swarm maintenance, and a perfect example of that is what we did yesterday on State Route 163 between I-8 and downtown San Diego, where we closed southbound 163, and we mobilized 50 of our maintenance staff, and we were doing all sorts of maintenance activities. We were taking care of weeds, we were taking care of trash, we were taking care of potholes, and also guardrail. It was much easier to do it with the road closed, and also a lot safer for us. And we'll have a video clip later in the presentation to show you that. We also have construction contracts to basically help us with picking up leaders. So every time that we put out a construction contract, we also require them to pick up leader within their job limits. So you will notice, like, for example, on the I-5 in North Coast Corridor, the area, it's pretty clean, and we thank our construction contractors for taking care of those areas like that. So let's go on to the next slide. So this shows you some examples of leader activity, and one of the ones that I want to highlight is the picture on the right, because a lot of the areas where we pick up leader, we have to either close lanes or work next to traffic. And in this case, what you see is a mangled attenuator in the back of a truck of a moving lane closure that was picking up trash. So we have to, one of the bad things about trash is that it exposes our employees also to the perils of working next to traffic. And that's, that is something of concern. We get about 10 incursions per month in areas that are close to the traffic for these type of activities. In November and December, we lost 2 partners from the construction industry here in San Diego due to vehicles going into a closed area and hitting 2 other workers. So that's definitely a problem that we need to continue focusing on, as well as the leader problem. Let's go on to the next slide. So some of the partners that we contract, so some of these are private and some of these are nonprofit organizations, but this goes to the point from the gentleman that Alex, I believe, that asked about whether we would consider privatizing some of this work. So we partner with the Center of Employment Opportunity. They provide vans for us. We pay them to provide those vans. And this is a great service to society also, because this organization also helps people that are transitioning back into society, and therefore kind of a win-win for both. We also partner with the Veteran Outreach Program. This is an organization that focuses on our veterans to try to reinsert them into the workforce. And we had 1 crew running during COVID. Unfortunately, we had downsized the size of the Veteran Outreach Program because of the social distancing as well as the stay-home order issues. We're happy to report that we're now expanding it back again as the number of the stay-home orders mandates were lifted, as well as we have new procedures in place, and as well as some of the vaccines are starting to roll out. But we've expanded the crew that we have working from the Veteran Outreach Program to work also on weekends. And we're also contracting with 3 more crews with the Veteran Outreach Program, which also those 3 work crews will be working 6 days a week. So that will give us, each crew has about 6 people now. During COVID, we had gone down to about 3 or 4 people only per van. But now that we're back up to 6 people and 3 new vans from the Veteran Outreach Program, and again, these are paid vans that we provide for, that will add another 18 people picking up litter in our county. And then we also, in good times, we utilize the county probation program. This is where people that get traffic fines, in lieu of paying the traffic fine, they work with the court system, and the judge basically assigns them to doing community service, which in this case translates to picking up litter on our highways. Unfortunately, this program was suspended due to COVID, and it hasn't started again. But at any given day, it was giving us 60 people per day picking up litter, working out their fines. And on Saturdays, we were getting upwards to 80 people because more people taking the opportunity to do that on their day off. So that's a program that we will continue monitoring with the courts and with the sheriff department, and we're hoping that it will come back online soon, as soon as the pandemic gets under control. And we also have hazardous waste teams. These ones focus a little bit more on the unsheltered encampments that are in our right of way, and they deal with things as far as removing human waste and things like that our maintenance people should not be exposed to. There's one more item that is not in here, and it's an emergency service contract that we were authorized to do by our headquarters. A couple of weeks ago, we were the first district in the state. Within 24 hours of the green light, we had a contractor in place. And this, through this contract over the next 4 months, and partly the reason that this contract was authorized is to offset the issue that we have lost, the county probationers. But over the next 4 months, we will be using 4 crews. So again, approximately that translates into another 20 people picking up litter. And this 2 of the crews are already have already started, and 2 of the crews will be coming online here soon by the end of the month. I should also mention that we've augmented our maintenance forces with 7 service assistant managers. Some of them that were actually out on 163 yesterday, and we will be bringing another 9 on April 1st. So if you add up the 16 service managers, the additional crews from the Veteran Outreach Program, as well as the emergency contract with QSI, I tally up about 54 people that will be picking up trash, which almost offset what we lost by the county probation program. So that is great news for us. Let's go on to the next slide. Another partner that we utilize to pick up trash is the Adopt a Highway program. Now, this program actually recently reached an anniversary. I saw some social media regarding that last week. I think it was established in 1985. And we have approximately 445 areas in the county that have been adopted. Now, the adoptions can be volunteer groups where they come in and do their own pickup, or they can also be companies that hire a contractor to come and do the cleanup, and they pay those contractors. We don't get involved in the hiring of the contractors or paying those contractors. Those companies do it themselves. And in exchange for either the volunteer organizations or the companies that do this service, we put a sign out on the freeways, and that recognizes their help in keeping our freeways and our ramps clean. The breakdown of the program is approximately 75% are volunteer organizations and 25% are sponsorships. The cost of a sponsorship ranges approximately between $250 to $1,000 based on the size and the frequency of the adoption. If I can go on to the next slide. So some of the things that we've done since this subcommittee was established, one of them is we have published an online map that shows to the public, as well as to all of you, the areas that are adopted, the areas that are up for adoption, and also the areas that cannot be adopted because of safety issues. And I should mention that there are some areas that cannot be adopted just because of, I mentioned, the safety issues that I mentioned, that if it requires traffic control, we're typically not putting those areas out for adoption. And on the previous slide, I should have mentioned that there's an opportunity to adopt almost 340 new locations that are currently up for adoption and don't have adoptees. So one of the things that we've been doing is through that map, but as well as through elected officials, public works directors, city managers, and chambers of commerce, is we're trying to get the word out that, hey, this is a great win-win for the private sector as well as community organizations as well for us. So we're definitely doing a lot of marketing to try to get the program the program expanded and get more adoptions. But also that comes with accountability, because we notice that sometimes, and particularly with some of the volunteer organizations, they can be very gung-ho at the beginning, but they may lose interest over time. And we now require all the organizations picking up litter under the Adopt a Highway program to send us monthly pictures of the litter that they picked up. Also under these programs, Caltrans picks up the bags and disposes them. So we also, our maintenance forces see if the area that is adopted is getting picked up or not. You may have seen the white bags with the Adopt a Highway logo on them on the side of the road, waiting to be picked up by us. For example, over the weekend, I saw in my part of town on 5 between SeaWorld Drive and I-8, I saw a number of bags stacked every so often, waiting for us this week to go and pick them up. And one of the things that we are working on also, this was actually a suggestion from the legislator and also a retired judge that passed the legislation in California regarding Adopt a Highway. And he suggested that we may try larger signs than the ones that we have to get, again, more people interested in the program. So we're going to be piloting a sign that is 52% larger than the signs that we have that have been approved on a statewide basis. But on the multi-lane freeways, where it may be harder to see that smaller sign, we're going to try to pilot these larger signs here for the next year or two, and then see if that leads to an increased number of adoptions. So let's go on to the next slide. So we also, so these are the adoptees coming into our right-of-way and clean a litter once or twice a month. But in addition to that, we also coordinate with local municipalities to do one-day events. And we are working on trying to put together an event where we may provide traffic control, safety equipment and training. And while we're performing other maintenance activities, the public can come in and pick up litter. So stay tuned for that. We're definitely being a little more cautious to make sure that if we put together this event, it's going to be safe for the public because of the pandemic. But we're really looking forward to doing something like that. Let's go on to the next slide. So one of the things that that we also been focusing and through this subcommittee as well is the areas of responsibility where local roads cross state highways. So on the top picture, you see an example, and the reason is because where those local roads cross the highway, the local agencies are responsible for maintaining those roads, as well as the sidewalks next to those roads. So if you look at the top picture here, this is a city street crossing under a freeway. The freeway goes on top, and the city is actually responsible for maintaining the trash. Well, you see that there's actually some trash on the back side of that sidewalk, and it actually, you can just reach over and pick it up. So one of the things that we are encouraging is the cities to, and we wrote letters to all the cities regarding this, is don't be afraid to reach over and pick up that trash. It does not make sense from a taxpayer standpoint to have you out there maintaining the road and the sidewalk, and that trash is within your reach, and somebody calls us to basically go out there and pick up that trash. So it's an approach to basically try to promote everybody to be part of the solution. And since there are already maintenance responsibilities from the local agencies, some of the local agencies express concern because of the liability of working outside of the areas, their areas, and that's why we provided letters releasing them from that concern. So let's go on to the next slide. So next I'm going to talk about how we measure the condition of our freeways, and what this map shows you is the significant trash generating areas. Now that is a little bit of a technical term, and that is tied in to the Caltrans water control board permit. So the areas in red that you see on this map are the areas that the water board says are significant trash generating areas where we need to focus on making sure that we reduce the amount of trash that ends up in this road. So it's basically every road in the urban area with some exceptions. But the fact that some of the roads are not colored as a significant trash generating area does not mean that we're not picking up litter in those areas. We're picking up litters everywhere, but the ones in red are the ones that the Regional Water Quality Board specifically focuses on. So let's go on to the next slide. So the way that we, Caltrans as a whole, historically deals with measuring how the condition of our freeways is with respect to trash is an annual level of service assessment. Once a year, all the districts are required to go, and our headquarters basically gives us a random list of freeways to go and sample, and we look at we go through that list, and we basically come up with, through a formula that they give us, we come up with a level of service. What does that mean? Well, it is a once a year snapshot for these facilities, and litter is very dynamic, and it happens, conditions can change very quickly, as you will see from some of my future pictures. But from a statewide basis, our level of service scores are actually one of the better in the state. That does not mean that we're proud of the condition of our highways here, and we definitely think that more can be done. So one of the things that we thought about working with the subcommittee here was, instead of relying on that once a year score, let's go into that significant trash generating areas and do quarterly assessments, local quarterly assessments, where we're gonna drive these freeways, and we're gonna we divided these freeways into 5-mile segments, and we're rating them as good, fair, or poor. How is the rating based? According to those pictures there. The raters basically compare those 5-mile segments according to those 3 pictures, and that will give us a couple of things. One is a much more dynamic condition of the state of litter on our freeways. It will also tell us where our worst problems are, and it will help us deploy our resources when they're most needed. So since we last met, we conducted our first level of our first evaluation following this regional approach, really, and the results were significant. And I'll just give you the highlights, and when we come back in the next meeting, I can give you more details. But in essence, about a third of our highways are significant trash generating areas were in poor condition, and out of the ones in poor condition, most of the locations were south of Interstate 8. So along the lines of what a couple of the board members mentioned, and also some of the public comments, the problem seems to be worse south of 8 than north of 8. And we're definitely going to be focusing some of the new resources that I mentioned earlier in those areas. Let's go on to the next slide, because I think I'm running late. So where did the trash come from? Let's go on to the next slide as well. It's clearly from the public. It's from people traveling on our freeways. Like Len mentioned, it's not just a trip to the landfill. It's also people moving from one place to the other, people bargain hunting, garage sales, recycling, and just moving things along the highway system. It also, unfortunately, comes from unsheltered encampments. And if I may open a parenthesis regarding that, one of the changes that COVID brought for the state highway system is that in accordance with the Centers for Diseases Control guidelines, we stopped removing encampments when COVID hit, except for encampments that pose a safety issue. So a lot of the encampments that we would have removed historically, we're not removing today. Now, we do clean the areas around those encampments, but we're not removing encampments like we used to. Let's go on to the next slide. So the next couple of slides show you what I was talking about earlier about how dynamic the problem is. This picture shows you on June 27th, an area of on 94 where we clean. You can see how littered it was on the left side, our maintenance crews picking up trash, and then on the top picture, On the right side, it actually, we left the area clean when we were done. So that was June 27th. Let's go on to the next slide. So 4 days later, you already, on July 1st, now you already start seeing some trash accumulating there. And 2 weeks later, you can see the kind of the trash has been even blown off into the landscape. So very important also to maintain the landscape at the same time that we're picking up trash as well. But sometimes, the litter can be a demoralizing issue for our crews because sometimes they're cleaning it. At the end of the day, they're ready to come home and vehicles come by and stuff is flying off of vehicles right in the area where they just cleaned. Let's go on to the next slide. So moving forward, like I mentioned, we are expanding some of our workforce as well as some of our partnerships. We're also working with the County of San Diego on an outreach campaign that is larger than the Tarp Your Load campaign and the landfills. So Lens Point, we are working with the county on a larger campaign to educate the public and hopefully to promote community pride in our region, because I think that's a big part of this issue. We also, at the Leader Subcommittee previous meetings, we had a presentation by the CHP, as I mentioned. So the CHP continues to be a partner in this as well. Let's go on to the next slide. We are extensively using social media. Let's go on to the next slide. These are some pictures from past events as well as pre-COVID events. At the bottom left, you actually see the 2019 coastal cleanup event that we participate in, cleaning. Caridad and I were actually out there cleaning the Sweetwater River. On the top right picture, you actually see, I'm sorry, the top left picture, you see an event in 94, an Emerald Hill, an Adopt a Highway event. The coordinator for our veteran outreach program was there with us, as well as the group that adopted that ramp. On the top right picture, you actually see the event that we did with National City, and we partner with Mayor Sotelo Solis of National City, as well as EDCO, provided a dumpster. EDCO provided a dumpster at one of our park and rides. It was so successful that we filled the dumpster with unwanted goods, and the mayor and EDCO were able to get us a second dumpster so that people could bring in their unwanted goods so they could be properly disposed of. And events, also more events with the CHP at the landfills, reminding people about tarping their loads and some other enforcement activities. Let's go on to the next slide. So as we mentioned earlier, the California Vehicle Code says you can't transport loose items without having them tarped. So it is the law, and we've done events in the past, and we recently did one about a week ago at the Otay landfill. Let's go on to the next slide. So I want to thank Mayor Blakespear as well as Mayor Salas for joining us during that event, and as well as Republic for making their staff available during the event. And also Len and Mark from I Love a Clean San Diego and Surf Rider Association. They were there the entire time, and I think they are here. Hopefully they can share some statistics from the event. I know Mark was keeping the statistics of how many people were showing up, how many people were properly tarped or not. I think it was a very successful event. We're gonna take this show on the road next time to a Miramar landfill in the city of San Diego. But stay tuned, there's more to come. Let's go on to the next slide. And this highlights the swarm maintenance that we did on 163 yesterday. I believe we have a clip, if we can play it. It's only a couple of minutes long. Does the production have it?
Route 163 early this morning through Balboa Park and Hillcrest.
In fact, they shut down the southbound lanes to traffic for about 7 hours, sprucing up and picking up loads of pandemic trash. News 8 photojournalist Anne Marie Spalding introduces us to the workers who are keeping San Diego beautiful.
Pretty tough waking up, coming out here. My name's Robert Mercado. I'm out here doing landscaping on the 163 South.
There's so much work that needs to be done here in this area that we're actually going to come back
next Sunday and do the same thing. Cutting back the ice plant, the weeds, the bushes encroaching onto the shoulder, cleaning it up, beautifying it, picking up litter. Litter is a major issue for us. It's a systemic issue statewide. Sean Rizzuto, I'm the District Division Chief for Maintenance. Single-use items, masks, gloves, a lot of fast food items. Those items, that debris, that trash, ends up in our waterways, ends up all over the place. Officer Jake Sanchez, Public Information Officer for the California Highway Patrol. We're out on the 163 freeway. Southbound side was shut down today. We have between 40 and 50 people out here working. We shut down the road this morning at 3 a.m. We'll open it back up at 10 a.m. And this enables us to do an accelerated amount of work in a short period of time. We're doing all different types of maintenance activities. We're actually doing crack sealing on our concrete pavement. We're repairing some of the guardrail throughout this historic section of freeway. We're doing tree trimming. We're able to actually concentrate on the work at hand rather than having to worry about errant vehicles coming into our closures. It's safer for me and for my crew out here so that we all go home to our families at the end of the day and we could work more comfortable out here and focus more on the job instead of traffic flying by 80 miles an hour, worrying if we are going to go home at the end of the day. So safety is a major issue, and us being able to close down the freeway to get the job done, doing everything to make San Diego look good out here.
So I'd like to thank the CHP also for both their participation in the TARP or Load event, as well as the closure on Sunday. The closure on Sunday was from 3 a.m. to 10 a.m. So that's why in the future, we would like to do something like this involving the community. But for this particular time frame, it was a little bit tough, and we decided to do the work ourselves. At the end of the day, at Caltrans, we take this seriously. We're not going to rest until our freeways are clean of litter. And I'll conclude with that, and I'll be here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, well, thank you. That was a really good video. I'm glad you showed that to us. And thank you for the updates. We had asked at this committee for updates on various of those matters. And I do hope, the one thing that I didn't quite see as much progress on the number of adopted highway sections. So the reality is there are still 340 available sections. And I think that really needs to be a priority, is that those get adopted. So the outreach that's required to make that happen. And then of course that they're doing a good job, and that adopted sections are not trashy, because that's like really the key part of where it seems like things are improving. And I appreciate that, but I hope you have the staff to manage, 700 different sections and just to make sure that's being done well.
Yes, and the reason I didn't focus on that is because we promised to bring that at the next meeting. That's the focus of the next meeting. Okay. So I wanted to save that till the next meeting, but we will bring an update regarding the Adopt a Highway we will focus on that for the next meeting.
Okay, great. I want to see if we have public comment on this section. So I want to ask the clerk.
Thank you, Chair. We do have 2 members of the public with their hands raised. Okay. Juliana Jara, followed by Alex Yakutis. And Alex, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your last name.
Hello, my name is Juliana Jara, and I had some questions about the educational outreach that was presented in the beginning of the agenda, as well as during the previous presentation. And I see that the city has adoption sites like the Adopt a Highway and the ramp adoptions, the AAH program staff. As mentioned in the beginning of the agenda, I recall someone saying young people are always on highways, quote unquote, speeding and it seems as if there needs to be interconnection between getting information to these young people in ways that are readily available for them. And I also did notice that flyers, emails, and social media outreach has been utilized, but I was wondering if there was any other sort of tactics that are being planned to put in place so that we could reach out to young people and other generations to prevent littering in the San Diego area?
Do you want to answer that quickly, Gustavo, before the next public speaker?
Well, I would love to connect Juliana with Caridad Sanchez, the head of our public information office. If she has any ideas, we're willing to hear them out.
Okay,
great.
yeah, I would love to connect.
And Juliana, I have your email address. I can help with that after the meeting.
Great, thank you so much.
No problem at all. And next is Alex. You can go ahead when you're ready. Alex, you're self-muted at the moment. If you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead with your comments.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that Director Gustavo, is it Delarta? Is that Delarta? Is that correct? I wanted to make sure he didn't think I was being flippant about what I said about Caltrans. What I was trying to say was, sometimes maintenance is different than engineering, and some people are better at other things than others. But what is really important, I know the director's commitment, and I've heard it from other people about his willingness to go out himself and people within Caltrans to clean up and his passion for it. So that's super important to me to make sure I get that across. The other big picture for me is I feel like I don't want to be a member of the public complaining here. I want to go out and do the work also and get people together. And I think the one-day cleanup is going to be a really good thing. And I look forward to that being implemented. I know we were talking about it, I think at least one meeting ago, and we'll put a team together to do it. So that's something we'll do. I would like to say, though, I think as a public servant, it's the productivity. A lot of money is being spent, but a lot of money being spent doesn't mean the problem is being solved or people are being productive. I'm not saying they're not, but I just divided 12.5 million by 185,000 bags, and that's about $70 a bag. And I know there are many other things, and this is, again, I don't want to be reactionary, but I think the other thing is, I want to be part of the solution and come out and help, and I'll do that. And I have to just prove myself willing to do that. But there's a bigger frustration, I think, for many of us in the state. And I think the CHP has a big responsibility because you're at the tail end of the problem. The proactivity on the front end, such as law enforcement, or just think if a CHP sat outside the EDCO consolidation facility writing tickets as people came in, rather than forcing enforcement on other people. So there are a lot of good creative ideas, and I think this committee is so good. I just want to put it out there. I don't want to be finger pointing at Caltrans as the main part of it, but the big elephant in the room to me is the productivity of our public servants. And are you doing the most with your people from a leadership standpoint? And maybe you are, and I'd love to know more. But that's the thing, that the accountability to that is super important for those of us that contribute. So thank you to the committee for letting me talk, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your comments and the focus on this. I think, we all want to be part of the solution, like Alex said. So these one-day events are really great. And I hope that you're able to have more of them and have the community participate in, picking up the trash and the things the community can do. Because we think a lot of people would love to be part of that solution. And even if it starts at 3 a.m., I was out counting people who are unsheltered at 4 a.m. So, and there are volunteers who do that kind of stuff. I think it's also important, I'll say this for the committee members, I know we need to wrap up here because we're just a couple minutes over, but I think we need to have a specific focus on the unsheltered population and the trash, the reality of that in the Caltrans right-of-ways and the trash that's generated. So, adding that to one of our upcoming agendas. I think our next agenda for this committee is talking with our legislative delegation. So of course, that's a place where we need it to be on their radar and hear what they're potentially doing and express what we're hoping, the efforts they can help support. Because sometimes, of course, Caltrans is a state agency. So ultimately, the state laws that regulate Caltrans are what drives some of the behavior changes that we might want to see, depending on how effective all of this is. So I'll be working with the staff on that. If on the agenda for next time. If any of the board members want to make a suggestion for recommendations for things that we talk about here, just pass it along to me in an email or to Francesca, the clerk at Sandag, so that we can have, we can add that to the agenda, because we want this committee to be responsive to what the members on the committee want, as well as the public, of course. So I think, I don't see any other hands, so I think that we will say thank you. We appreciate all the information, and our next meeting is on, is it really May 10th at 1? Does that sound right, Francesca? May 10th at 1? Yeah.
Yes, Chair, that's the right date.
2 months. Okay. So, so we will be adjourned until then. And thank you very much, Gustavo, and to all the people who presented today, the waste haulers, and to our new committee members. We appreciate you. Thank you. And with that, we're adjourned.